And literally 2 days later, he's playing with the Foo Fighters.
He's in the band.
And then the rest is history.
And the reason Grohl said that was because they were already, her and that band were peaking during that.
Oh my God! It was Jagged Little Pill.
And Grohl said, "Well, wait a minute, we're not anywhere near that level."
We're basic at that time. Actually,
a garage band.
Well, they were a one-man band.
Yeah, pretty
in
much.
reality. Because after they recorded all the songs for the first album, he secretly, Dave Grohl, went behind the back of the band and re-recorded almost all of the instruments himself.
And he did it all. Yeah,
and put it out, and of course, it's huge.
Right.
It was huge, and people started to realize, okay, this guy is a pretty legit musician. I thought he was just the dumb drummer from Nirvana, but oh my God, he can play guitar and do all sorts of stuff.
And he can actually sing, and
he's got a great voice, and more importantly, he's got the it factor as a frontman, which very few people have. So Taylor Hawkins joins the Foo Fighters. About 5 years after he joins the Foo Fighters, he drops clinically dead in Italy in 2001 of basically a drug overdose. I mean, that's all you can. He got a hold of. I don't know if it's bad heroin or magic mushrooms,
whatever.
But dude basically laid in a coma for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And Grohl talked about it frequently, that he was so angry at Taylor because you're doing the same thing to him that Kurt Cobain did, right? And Taylor comes out of that, gets himself clean and sober, gets married, has children, and goes on to become a monster rock star.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the very few drummers on the planet that at every Foo Fighters show comes out and is the lead singer.
Right.
Now, it's easier to be the lead singer of the Foo Fighters when Dave Grohl, who happens to be one of the best drummers on the planet, takes over on the drums.
Right.
And that's one of the things Hawkins always said at the concerts was, it's very hard to be the drummer in Foo Fighters when you know that you're playing drums for the best drummer in the world. Which isn't necessarily true. I think Dave Grohl's amazing.
Yeah, he's right up there.
He's up there. Yeah. He's in the conversation, but it still is great praise. There's so many things I want to say about Taylor Hawkins. His unique love of Queen. Queen was his musical, not just his musical influence, it was his life. Freddie Mercury, Brian May, they were all his life. And they finally, in 2008, got to play it. They played at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
And Brian May came on, and they did some Queen songs. And that became, that sort of transformed the Foo Fighters to the point that now every concert, Taylor Hawkins comes out and usually does Under Pressure. Or another, great Queen song. They've done "We Will Rock You." We Are the Champions. They've done them all. He looks like a dude that would bum a cigarette off of you.
He looks like a
on
surfer
Venice
dude.
Beach.
Yeah,
he's a surfer dude, right?
Long blonde hair.
Plays in board shorts.
Yeah, t-shirt.
Yeah. If you saw him walk into the store, you'd put your hand over your wallet because you weren't sure whether or not this stuff was about to go down. But an amazing musician and provided great for his family. And then you find out the crap they found in his bloodstream. Mm-hmm. My God. If I drop dead tonight, and I hope I don't, so if this is my last words on earth, so be it. Here's what you're going to find in my bloodstream. Blue Moon. And my wife's fajitas. Right. That's pretty much it. That's what... I take a Centrum Silver. Okay. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I do take a vitamin for over 50. Yeah. That's it. This dude had a pharmacy.
I mean, he could have killed an elephant.
You wonder how much of this stuff he was taking.
I don't know.
On a daily basis, because the opioids is the scary part to me. The fact that he was so heavily doped up on opioids, they pretty much rob your ability to be on time. And as a drummer,
that's your responsibility.
It's kind of your responsibility. So obviously he's not taking opioids and going out and performing. He's not shooting. You've never heard of a drummer typically doing shows on heroin. Now you've heard of drummers being on speed, meth, coke, weed, beer, whiskey. Right. We've heard of all that. But very few drummers are able to drum on opioids.
You can't do it.
So that tells me that because I don't know if you know this, but I'm a health teacher.
Oh.
So that makes me...
An expert.
Thank you. But it does tell me that this is a guy who obviously had access to opioids, fentanyl, and that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
And it tells me that he realized, I can't take these and perform. But as soon as I'm off stage, I'm loading up because they make me feel wonderful and warm and fuzzy. And I'm in a foreign country without my family. I think there's so many issues that we didn't know about with Taylor Hawkins. He was 50 years old. It's heartbreaking. I feel for Dave Grohl.
I've been through this twice.
Twice now. And really almost 3 times, because he almost lost Taylor Hawkins in 01, right? So here we are 20 years later, and he finally does lose him. I don't know. I don't know what version of the Foo Fighters we're ever going to see again. I feel like they'll go on, because apparently they're working on an album.
I don't think there's any doubt they'll go on. I mean, I think they'll say that that's what he would have wanted, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure all those guys and most bands, you're not going to be that selfish. Obviously, well, if I'm not around for whatever reason, you guys, of course, you can't continue. That's idiocy. But like you and I were talking before we started, I just don't know what you think is going to happen when you have that much stuff in your system. I just don't.
Right, and what I said to you, and I'll say it now, neither did he, because when you take the amount of drugs that he had in his system, assuming that was probably not the first night that he's taken these drugs, right? Most likely his brain chemistry has been altered long ago. And I think the bouts of time in his life where things were normal, he was fighting so hard just to be normal. And then his brain overtook. I mean, I'm a firm believer that people that get addicted, do I think it's weakness? Yeah, I think the way I was raised makes me think it's weakness if you're addicted to something. But I also know that as I've gotten older, I realize that when you put synthetics into your body, it can alter your chemistry. Look at what they've said about the shot, right? That it could alter your DNA, whatever. The fact is, I don't think Taylor Hawkins has been Taylor Hawkins for a very long time, and I don't know that he ever was. And what these guys don't realize, guys like Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington, Lane Staley, Scott Weiland, and while in the case of Lane Staley and Scott Weiland and Chester, not Chester, but Lane Staley did not die of suicide, right? Technically. No. Neither did Scott Weiland, right? I mean, Scott Weiland made it into his 40s and succumbed.
Well, it was suicide over a 20-year period.
Right. It was a 20-year suicide. So, but then you've also got guys like Kurt Cobain, who literally just killed themselves. Shannon Hoon, who pretty much just, from Blind Melon, sort of purposely killed himself. What is it? Why are these musicians, the Jimi Hendrix of the world, the Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, not my kind of music, but I was very aware of her talent. The girl was talented. Why do all these people die and leave this wake of destruction? And a band like Tool, JT just mentioned the band, but has basically been unscathed. Did Maynard just make great choices when he put this band together?
Well, I would say that's part of it, yeah.
He found a drummer that literally his only vice in the world is...
Who came from another planet, apparently.
Apparently he has 8 arms, but his other vice is that he likes to drink beer and watch the Chiefs and the Jayhawks.
Yeah.
If you want to find Danny Carey this weekend, he's going to be at the Final Four.
Okay.
I promise you.
Oh, there's no doubt.
I promise you he'll be there.
Yeah.
And in Maynard's case, you got a guy that might be one of the weirdest dudes.
I would love to hang out with him.
On the planet.
I would.
So would I.
That would be awesome.
Who walks his kid to school every day, walks her to school, when he can, and owns one of the most successful wineries in northern Arizona, ships wine all over the planet, and, oh, by the way, plays in 2 other really successful bands.
Right.
In A Perfect Circle and Pussifer.
Right.
Has had his hip replaced, and is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu which means you can't be on opioids or anything and
accomplish
that.
There's part of your answer when you have those kind of disciplines in your life.
That keeps him from finding vices.
Not to say that he.
Oh, that's a great point.
Not to say that he wants to do that, but when you have those kind of disciplines in your life, that. And oh, by the way, there's plenty of people out there, no matter what your profession. Like we're sitting here having a few of these.
You're having way more than I have.
Well, we'll have a few, and that'll be it.
Right?
I mean, right. And some people, for whatever reason, that off switch doesn't exist. And it never ends well.
And when it doesn't, it also starts the next morning, right?
Correct.
We know we have friends, people we've been acquainted with that have struggled with alcohol, and I guess I understand it, right? I guess I get it. I don't know, but I just wish that guys like Taylor Hawkins and Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell and even Anthony Bourdain, who I miss terribly. He was one of my favorite guys that I love to listen to talk. Anthony Bourdain told great stories and was a great storyteller. But anyway, I digress. These guys, why did it hit them and why didn't it hit a single member of the band Tool? Why didn't it hit... Well, I guess it did hit Kiss. We talked about that. Yeah. And I guess it did hit... I guess it hits most bands. Why is Tool...
Well, everybody's different. Like, and I think you're hardwired in different ways, meaning that you and I can't sit here and play and create music.
Well, you haven't listened to me play.
Right. I need to do that here real soon.
I wouldn't.
But there's a part of your brain that kicks in, I'm a believer in, that allows you to do that.
I agree. There's a zone.
Yeah.
I agree with
Same
that.
Same thing with being an artist. I can't draw a stick man, but other people can draw, and I think there's a certain part of your brain that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
You don't like numbers, I do. So there's the yin and the yang. I think it's all
there's something in their brain, right, and it does seem to hit performers at a really high rate. Mm-hmm. So there must be something about the ego, right? Because let's face it, if you're in a rock band like the Foo Fighters, don't tell me everybody's like everybody says Dave Grohl doesn't have an ego. Okay. He doesn't have an ego in that he's not Axl Rose.
Right.
He's not Johnny Rotten. But Dave Grohl needs applause.
Right.
That's his currency. Because he's got all the regular currency. Mm-hmm. He's got all the money in the world.
Right.
And yet he keeps giving back and he performs, he's very involved in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've been inducted. All this stuff it's amazing. They have been inducted, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Last year.
God, I'd have felt stupid if I got that wrong. But Dave Grohl, by all counts, does nothing but drink beer and whiskey. Has never put a drug in his body. Why? Brain chemistry? Wired that way?
Well, and I think that's part of it, and I also think he's obviously been around enough of it to sit there and go, yeah, I'm not even going down that road because it ends in disaster.
At 19, he was the drummer for Nirvana.
Right. Their fifth drummer, by the way.
The fifth one. And by all accounts, Kurt Cobain didn't have a clean day in his life. Has been on heroin since he was 14 and mixed it in with all kinds of other stuff. And finally at 27, called it a career. Mm-hmm. Chris Novoselic has really battled addiction his whole life. Pat Smear is definitely not an angel. I mean, he was in a band called The Germs.
Right.
I'm done right there.
Yeah.
How does Dave Grohl grow up in? Because he truly grew up in punk rock. Mm-hmm. That's where Dave Grohl cut his teeth. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
He was a punk rocker from Washington D.C.
Right.
Who fell into Nirvana.
Well, and I think he's very intellectual and probably not given enough credit for that. And I don't mean other people are stupid. I just mean I think that he just operates at a little higher level. He's got a pretty high intellect, and he sits there and he goes, I don't care what age. He goes, yeah, I'm not doing that because I know that's going to end badly for me.
If I put heroin in my system,
right?
then it ends.
Right. And I think there are plenty of people out there that think that way, but then also, like we were talking about, there are plenty of people out there that sit there and go, well, everybody that's become addicted or has died from this, they didn't know what they were doing, but I do. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So,
but I think they all say that.
No, there's
right?
no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. And I think that's what Taylor was telling